I'm pointing out facts. If I point a finger, that's point of attack. Good point, who's next? Flag on the plate, now I'm causing them death. We bet on ourselves, so what you expect? A die-hard fan, never live with regret. Yes, sir. Go to my neck. Go to my neck. Burgundy flex. Burgundy step. Who wants the smoke? We bringing it home. Be my guest. Be my guest. Look how we step. Who we got next? Who we got next? Step on the right, step on the left. Who do we rep? Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Right side, right side. Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Left side. Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Right in the middle. Commanders. Where's my soldiers? High off the way that this sound, they turn up as soon as they feed the ground. I am not playing around. I hit them, I bet that they feeling me now.
Welcome, one and all across the nation and around the world. I welcome you all to episode 15 of the Commanders Gridiron Report. I am your host, Drew Willingham, and we are back for another week of this interesting team that we have seen throughout this year for 2023. But today I have a special guest with me. She is the founder and CEO of Seawall Sports and Entertainment, as well as the producer and host for Bowie TV as well in the local DMV area. The host of Coaching from the Couch. Give it up for Candi Seawall Waller. Welcome to the show there.
Thank you so much, Drew. I'm so excited that we're finally able to do this.
Definitely. We definitely know a lot from watching this team over the years. It has definitely been an interesting thing to see within this offense, but, you know, the defense has definitely made some changes with the trades. We'll get to that here in a moment. But before we go any further, we have to get to the first segment, and that being the 1st and 10 segment, so we can get this show started properly.
They are the Washington Commanders. New name, new marks, new uniform.
Soldiers, are we ready for Operation Burgundy Flag?
And here with the 1st and 10, the Commanders moving business operations from FedEx Field to College Park. You know, with everything going on within this franchise right here, what are your thoughts when it comes to this team relocating starting in 2024?
I said, you know, when I first saw it, I said, okay, it really sounds like Maryland state legislators, specifically Governor Westmore, is making a push to keep the Commanders in Prince George's County, Maryland. For some reason, everyone keeps counting Maryland out. They keep counting PG County out. They are making strides. They are making a point to say, we want the Commanders to stay in Maryland. And I think this is a sign that they are trying to do whatever they can to make that happen. The fact that the team is actually needing additional space for more suites, I was like, oh, okay. So I think a lot of businesses and others as well, they use the space. And unfortunately, this is a place where if your favorite team is coming into town and is not named the Commanders, this is a great place to catch them live and in action. So I think they're making a statement, meaning the state of Maryland, and saying, hey, we want the Commanders.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, moving to Riverdale Park and the University of Maryland's, you know, Discovery District, you know, it's because of increased demand for stadium suites in an effort to expand the franchise's footprint into Maryland. As you definitely were saying, you know, the new offices will be located in that Discovery District, which definitely is something that can bring more eyes on this team. You know, definitely what you were saying with traveling teams as well, you know, Landover, the parking, you know, in the FedEx area right there, that field has definitely been on the decline for quite some time. You know, we've talked about the poopy water going down on the fans, you know, just a while back, you know, and then we get new ownership. It looks like, you know, the momentum is definitely shifting in a positive light when it comes to the business operations. You know, what we're seeing on the field is a result of the previous ownership, you know, along with the management tenure, which once we get to the off season, we may definitely see some changes that's been eluding throughout the entire season and before the season even started. So when it comes to that, I want to take it into the Burgundy Flex review because, you know, there was something you were just attending just before you got here that definitely you could touch some light on when it comes to this subject. And we'll go ahead and take it into that review here right now when it comes to that.
Yes, sir. Go to my neck, Burgundy Flex. Who
And here with the Burgundy Flex review, with the puzzled look on his face right here, being an old Riverboat Ron. I would be puzzled too if I had to deal with the, dismal play of this team throughout this year and previously. So I don't blame the man for having the look on his face there. But when it comes to that, what are your thoughts based on today's conference that you attended and even throughout the season? Just the overall mood of this team.
Well, I think the biggest news from today is that linebacker Jamin Davis is headed to IR. He had a season-ending shoulder surgery over the bye week from an injury that he sustained during the Miami Dolphins game. Coach Rivera shared that he came back into the game. He knew he wasn't feeling all the way right. Still came back into the game. After further just checking of it, they decided that he needed an MRI, and decided, yes, it is more of an extensive injury. So no Jamin Davis for an already struggling defense. So as you mentioned earlier, traded players, we get to that later, I think, and now this. So 4 games, there's still 4 more games to play against teams that have very high playoff hopes and are still definitely in the playoff hunt. In the LA Rams, the Jets are still trying to make a statement of some sort in these last few games. And of course, the San Francisco 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys, who knows what they could be playing for by the time they get to FedEx Field. Certainly a better playoff position for sure. I'm so certain. So this will be interesting. It feels like the season is over, and technically it is, right? But 4 more games is a lot of games, and a lot of teams have a lot to be playing for. So this won't be an easy way out. This could get even harder to watch.
And if anybody thinks the Commanders are going to win 4 straight games,
stop it. Get some help.
There's no way that they're going to win these next 4 games in a row. Yeah, they could definitely slide by on one of those, and I think that their best opportunity is going to be this weekend if that happens when it comes to the Rams, even though the Rams are on a 3-game winning streak and the Commanders are on a 4-game losing streak. So I don't see that happening. It doesn't look like they're going to get another win the rest of this year if I were to put my money on it. Unfortunately, it just being real when it comes to the caliber of teams that they're playing, especially when you're playing your last 2 games against the 49ers and the Cowboys. And before that, you have a Jets team that there's still a slight possibility that one of the greatest of all time in quarterbacks comes back and plays for that team. And I've seen you talk about it on the social media saying that, of course, of all the games for Aaron Rodgers to possibly come back against this, and it would be against this team right here in the Commanders, against a struggling defense that we just talked about, that got rid of their 2 best players for a 2nd and a 3rd round pick because they held off too long on Chase Young and had to settle for a 3rd round pick. Montez Sweat, I understand the 2nd round pick with that. I'm actually cool with the trade there for Montez Sweat because it's a 2nd round pick is fair for him at this point. But a 3rd round pick for Chase Young with the hype and everything that he had done up to this point, despite battling the injuries, this team has definitely not made the greatest of moves in some of these moves, especially with that one right there in Chase Young.
Yeah, and it seems like both of those players are in better situations, right? I mean, Chase Young goes without saying. He's playing for the San Francisco, he's on that team. So that goes without saying. But even for a Montez Sweat, who was able to get his guaranteed money within a week of being a Chicago Bear, I mean, it seems like his leadership presence, that he's a voice in the locker room. Many of the offensive and defensive players and coaches as well have noted how much better the defense has played with Montez there. No, have they made huge strides? Not necessarily, but the fact that your teammates and your coaches can say, there has been a difference since this person has been in the locker room. There's been a difference since this person has been on the field. He definitely didn't get the short end of the stick. When you turn around and look at, okay, Coach Rivera said, we still got a lot to play for. We haven't given up. We aren't doing this. It's kind of hard to sell. You weren't giving up on the season with trading Montez and Chase and only getting that 3rd back for Chase Young. So here we are, but those 2 players seem to be doing well, and their teams seem to be very happy with them, and much brighter, perhaps less confusion, maybe not for the Bears, but less confusion ahead for those players and the teams that they're on. But again, with Jamin Davis going out with the already struggling defense, could be rough. This could be a rough 4 weeks ahead of us.
Yeah, it especially from the outside looking in, it just appears as like they have those conversations with those two players a little too late, like kind of getting an understanding too late in the season of, hey, they're probably not coming back next year. Once their contract expires, you're going to lose them. You might as well get something for them. Montez Sweat, I'm cool with that trade, but the Chase Young 3rd-round pick, when he definitely deserved at minimum, in my case, saying a 2nd-round pick like in Montez Sweat. But Chase Young was of higher caliber than what Montez Sweat, especially on paper. So for them, it just seems like they've waited too long when they've had a lot of time, especially throughout this past offseason, to plan on it. The management team, but with the transition of the new ownership and everything, I can't get but so upset with it because it kind of happened late. I mean, what was it, like less than 6 weeks before we got the preseason, we were seeing the new ownership change. It was in July. So right before, the season even started, it was such a late transition. So I can only put so much on them, but this is why we'll probably see a turnover in that management department during this offseason.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the new ownership group became official. It was a little less than a week before training camp started. So, I mean, it moved fast. And I know that, fans want to see immediate changes, but it just can't happen that fast with the ownership group that just came on board, like you said, Drew, at the end of July. They have to wait it out, at least through the season, because at that point you've gone through OTAs, you've gone through a lot. And you just have to kind of see what happens. You really have to assess what you really have from your coaching, from top to bottom. You really do. And as you mentioned, the business operations, the ownership group is over all of that. The business side of it, the football side of it. What do you keep? What do you let go? Who do you bring in of your own folks? Because, it would be hard to believe that some of the members of the ownership group didn't have their own people in mind to bring in, right? I mean, that's just like with any job. People have have thoughts in mind of who they want to bring in. So this will be, I was really hoping that this upcoming off season would be quiet. It won't be. It will not be at all. It will be very active, I'm assuming, as soon as the Commanders and Cowboys game is over on January 7th. I anticipate it being a very active offseason.
Yeah, with us going this late in the season, I don't see any drastic changes between now and that final game of the year. If so, they would have done it already. The only thing I wish they kind of would have, I wish we could see more if EB is actually qualified to be a head coach, because with all the hype coming from Kansas City, and then here is the assistant head coach / offensive coordinator, what he has done with Sam Howell, despite how this season has gone, you can definitely see what he has done as far as a positive impact on Sam. But when you're taking almost 60 sacks in a season, when you're at 58 sacks at this point in the year through 13 games, it is absolutely atrocious to see that. I'm surprised the kid's not hurt. Like, he should be decrepit at this point for the amount of sacks, and not only the amount of sacks, but the impact of the sacks. This kid's gotten hit hard. During at least, I went back and watched some highlights earlier today, and it was close to 50 of those 58 sacks were like really hard hitting, like impact ones. You gotta give it to the kids' toughness out there and his grit to stand tall in there.
I mean, I always call him, I said, Sam Howell is a warrior. Like, he is a warrior, and he is doing it because he really wants to lead his team. He really believes in his teammates. And likewise, if we take it back a moment to think about the Giants game, when the Giants came to FedEx recently, and there was that late hit on Sam, and Curtis Samuel ended up throwing a few punches, and this is somebody who's a great teammate in Curtis Samuel, cool, calm, and collected. But I think in that moment, this is me speculating, just watching the game, I said, you know what? I think everyone says they're sensing exactly what we're saying right here. Like, that's just too many hits. The next one could be it for him this season, and they know how much he means to the offense. Even though struggling, Sam Howell means a lot to that offense. So when you see someone like a Curtis Samuel lose his cool with that late hit on his quarterback, you know that this team is like, oh my gosh, that is like the last thing that could happen, you know, in the season. But that's a lot. And for him to not have gone down, we've seen him go on the blue medical tent a few times. He comes right back out, gets right back out there on the field. There has to be something said about that. And I'm wondering just how closely that ownership group is saying, is this our guy? Does he have the right heart? Does he have the right spirit? Can we keep him and EB together? It's really going to be interesting, Drew, to see how they really feel about Sam and where things could go. Because we always wonder how much different things could have been with a better offensive line.
Absolutely. And we'll definitely touch base on that here in a second, to where we will get to do this.
Acknowledge me.
But before we do that, I have one more question based on this topic right here before we go to commercial break. When it comes to Ron Rivera's, talking today in the conference, what is the overall mood? Like, is it still does he feel defeated, or after a week off? Like, after a week off, a bye week, is there some type, do they feel re-energized in some way? Do they get the rest after having a long season with no break up to this point, where they're getting pummeled in these past 4 games? Do they seem a little bit more upbeat, or is it about the same?
Well, he said most of the players will all be back tomorrow. Some of them were back today. The coaches were back and everything, but most of the players will be back tomorrow. Ron Rivera he's just the same all the time. He's just the same all of the time. So, he's saying the same things in terms of, we're going to try to win some football games. And I had to kind of, smile, laugh to myself. I said, that's just Ron. So it's not the defeat that we saw after the Thanksgiving game. It's not that. It's not the defeat after the Dolphins game either. He was smiling a bit more. You can tell that he's down about Jamin being out for the remainder of the season. But he's still just saying literally the exact same things in terms of everyone playing to the best of their ability and their talent level and try to win some football games.
Hey, the one positive thing I said about the comparison to the Dolphins and the Cowboys game was at least they scored 5 more points the next week. They only lost by 5 less points. So I tried to find some type of positive with there. Both games, the past 4 games have just been, 3 of the 4. The Seahawks game wasn't as bad. But when it comes to the past 3 games alone, they've been outright atrocious. So, but when it comes to the comments here, we got Melvin Turismo in the house saying, yo, along with Mickey Delaney jumping in saying, hi, Drew. Hi, Candi. How are you both? I'm doing great. Candi looks like she's doing great. We're having fun here on episode 15. And we've got, looks like one of your followers here on Facebook, if they don't keep EB and Sam together, I believe they're going to move off of Sam. They had him last year, and I was giving him the hype after last year's game against the Cowboys in Week 18 because with what he did. I saw sparks there, and he did that without EB. So I think they should definitely not give up on him. But we'll get back to more of Sam Howell after the commercial break. We'll see you guys here on the other side.
Commanders, where's my soldiers? Right side. Commanders, where's my soldiers? Left side.
Football, and more football, you say? Well, tune in to Total Football Talk. Join your hosts, Drew Willingham.
You were playing like a dumpster Pelican quarterback.
And Cole Johnson.
It sets up a possible play action. Did you hear that, Dak Prescott?
As they take you through all the paces, both on the field and in the boardroom, of Total Football Talk. Every Tuesday at
9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central.
Exclusively on the Surtoba Media and the Comey Media Incorporated YouTube channel.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, look. Hey, stop playing games. Y'all already know. Go ahead and toss him some Willie Bucks. Ain't nobody playing around. Hey, $ DWillie87. Go ahead and hit him up on the Cash App and go ahead and give him some Willie Bucks. Look at Drew looking stoic, ladies and gentlemen. Stoic on that $10 bill. So go ahead, slide my man over some Willie Bucks, and we good. That's all I'm saying. We good. Some Willie Bucks.
Surtoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
If you're looking for a sports program that gives you the flavor.
Washington Commanders? Really?
This whole thing stinks to high heaven.
that pulls no punches.
Thuggish act by a thugger.
That gives you some humor.
Praise everything LeBron does and never criticize it.
If you want a show that gives you good times, then this is that show. BS3 Network proudly presents.
I am Cole Johnson, and welcome to
Cole Sports with a Z. Every Friday on Patreon, and every Saturday on YouTube, Spreaker, and all other outlets.
Commanders, where my soldiers? Right side. Commanders, where my soldiers? Left side.
And welcome back from that commercial break. Candi, you should recognize that one voice in the Willie Bucks commercial is our own Darrell Owens right there, formerly Mr. Rollback, with the great commentary right there during an old episode of the In or Out Sports Debate, which, guys, coming very soon. Stick around to the stories, the Instagram and Twitter stories out there, so I'll be announcing when that show will be back after a 2-month hiatus. But without any further ado, this episode, we can't celebrate any Soldiers of the Week as, the Commanders had a bye week. So I picked the top 3 players in the NFL. Let's go ahead and check that out real quick.
Where my soldiers? Right side. Commanders, where my soldiers? Left side.
And here were the Soldiers of the Week. My picks for the Soldiers of the Week, I got to go with Brock Purdy. 19 of 27, only 8 incompletions for 368 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Only because he had 19 incompletions, I had to put this man in second. But hey, other than that, he deserved to be in first if it wasn't for that. 24-43 for completions of attempts for 316 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception with 11 carries. 70 yards on the ground to help the Ravens in that win. And then a man I didn't think I'd be putting in this type of list anytime soon, and that being Zach Wilson for the Jets, keeping them alive for 27 of 36 completions of attempts for 301 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. And that is who I have for my Soldiers of the Week. Go ahead and take this into the next one because I definitely want to get Candy's take on this next one before the end of the show.
I off the way that this sound, they turn up as soon as they feed the ground. I am not playing around. I hit them, I bet that they feeling me now.
And here with the showstopper, another contribution from Darrell Owens as you see that picture of Sam Howell right there in that graphic, along with, 2 coaches that we don't know who will be there next season as well. When it comes to this one, the showstopper topic, this right here, will Sam Howell be the starting quarterback next season? How do you feel about this, Candi, when it comes to everything we talked about before the commercial break in this question right here?
I saw that comment from Marius. I'm still thinking because every team, every team that's a contender, who the quarterback is. You have to have your quarterback. And despite all of the challenges, all of the issues, and all of the sacks, we have to be honest. His numbers are impressive, right? And so I'm saying, what is there to say that they will keep Sam? Doesn't mean they won't draft another quarterback. Doesn't mean they won't draft another one. But say they keep Sam, make Eric Bieniemy the head coach, and Eric Bieniemy can bring in his own staff and keep who he wants or bring in other folks and truly get some truly stout, ready to play players, not players that you have to develop. So it's so critical. And I think that everyone saw exactly what I said earlier. What if they had a better offensive line? And understanding the importance of the investment in that line and how much it could have made a difference in Sam Howell's play. And the overall offense play. I think that Coach Eric Bieniemy could say he does become the head coach. Say he does. I think he would benefit from other assistants. Okay, you can bring in another offensive coordinator. Of course, they already need a defensive coordinator. But I think there's something to be said for this kid's grit. The grit, the resilience, the toughness, the short memory of still trying to make a play when you're down by 30 and just continuing to fight, that you just don't see that every day. You just don't see that. And you're losing and still trying to make something happen. I think that if Coach Bieniemy also can learn from some of his areas of improvement, of really honing in on what really worked for Sam, what the offense really looks like when Sam is moving about in the pocket and all, where he's strong. I think they can do some things. Immediately going out and getting another quarterback sets you back already. It already sets you back. And you just have to have some stability at that position in order to make a statement. And you got to have a strong, as we're all seeing, right? You had one of your top players, Brock Purdy. Who would have thunk it, right? Who would have known that your third stringer was going to end up becoming your starter? So you have to have great backups that can see you through at that quarterback position. If you don't have your quarterbacks locked in, you're pretty lost. So if this ownership group says, hey, this kid's got the right attitude, he didn't give up, and I don't know about anybody else. I don't know who would not give up after 58 sacks, but this kid is not. I think it's something to be said that, yeah, why not? But that doesn't mean you don't draft another quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, because we saw technically Sam Howell was the third stringer last year and was elevated up to starter. So not quite the success is what Brock Purdy's had with San Francisco, but they're two different teams around him. He has an offensive line and a lot of help around him, as to where, had they not spent that money on Carson Wentz 2 off seasons ago, could have invested in the offensive line. You could have seen what you had with Taylor Heineke for one, but then when it didn't work out, you could have put in Sam Howell. Same deal with last year. Sam Howell would have just came in a little bit earlier, and we might have seen a little bit more of a better Sam Howell more than in just one game. They could have built around him during this past offseason a little bit better, and who knows. But with the shambles of what the upstairs front office was, this is a result of all of that chaos and formulated onto the field. And you have a diamond in the rough in Sam Howell, in my opinion. I mean, because like you said, you proved the grit. He's taken 58 sacks in 13 games, along with the fact that he's thrown for almost 3,500 yards. He's at 3,466 yards, 18 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, and that is just in the air. He's been doing some damage with his wheels on the ground too, moving the ball when he has to with his legs and being smart with sliding. Something we wish we would have seen with RG3 back in the day, over 10 years ago, but shoulda, coulda, woulda. We can't go back in time with that. But with Sam Howell, I feel like, in my opinion, and I've been saying it since last offseason, people were saying that I was putting too much hype around him, that you have something special with the kid. And he has been proving it this year, because although they have 9 losses until these past 3 games that they've lost, they were in it for all the other games that they had lost pretty much, except for one. There was one other blowout loss. But other than that, the majority of their losses, I would say 5 of the 9, they were in it until the end pretty close. And, a possession or two would have made a difference. But coaching and some of the overall talent, especially with the foundation built within that offensive line, which we've been discussing for years, has been an issue. You haven't really had stability up the middle until when Scherf left and went to the Jaguars. So other than that, and there were still question marks around him. And, with Trent Williams leaving, once those 2 members left, the offensive line definitely drastically changed. And there were already question marks around those 2 pieces on the offensive line before we even got to that point. So definitely is going to be interesting to see how they address that, along with the other things we discussed throughout this episode. But before I go any further, I definitely want to thank you for your time that you've spent with me here for 30 minutes on this show. We definitely had a great time. Look forward to doing it again with you sometime down the road. I know you got to check on out and get to another previously scheduled event, but thank you for penciling me in and fitting this into your busy schedule. I greatly appreciate it.
Drew, this was awesome. What a fun show. I had a great time. Listen, let's try to do this again. And like I said, this off season is not going to be a quiet one. So for the remainder of the season and throughout the off season, trust me, you can always count on C-Ball to come on. If I have the time, let's get it scheduled, and I'd love to come back on.
I appreciate it. Sounds like a plan. And with that being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and take this into one more commercial break, and then I'll see you on the other side for the last 2 segments. Thank you again. I'll see you later on there, C-Ball.
See ya.
Commanders, where my soldiers, right side. Commanders, where my soldiers, left side.
Everything Boston. I love you morons. New Kids on the Block, New Edition.
Dear whatever the law firm is. Sincerely, the U.S. Supreme Court.
Ben Affleck, Matt Damon. Go yourself again, Jason Whitlock.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, look. Hey, stop playing games. Y'all already know. Go ahead and toss him some Willie Bucks. Ain't nobody playing around. Hey, $sign DWillie87. Go ahead and hit him up on the Cash App and go ahead and give him some Willie Bucks. Look at Drew looking stoic, ladies and gentlemen. Stoic on that $10 bill. So go ahead, slide my man over some Willie Bucks, and we good. That's all I'm saying. We good. Some Willie Bucks.
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Oh, yes. The tradition, the pageantry, the spectacle, the history, the slut. Wait. I gotta rep my brother's stuff right. All my DMV soldiers, stand up! And welcome to the Commanders Gridiron Report. You want your commanders to be repped right? Well, D. Willie is your man. Commanders Gridiron Report. Every Monday at 3:05 p.m. Eastern, 2:05 p.m. Central. Exclusively on the Sertoba Media YouTube channel. Music by J. Cool.
Where my soldiers, right side. Commanders, where my soldiers, left side.
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Commanders, where my soldiers, right side. Commanders, where my soldiers, left side.
And welcome back to the Commanders Gridiron Report, episode 15. Again, I want to thank Candi Waller for being here for the first 4 segments of the show to help make this a great show to start on out as we wrap things up towards the last 2 segments. On the way out, we got some comments before we go any further. I want to acknowledge you guys here in the chat. Jacqueline says, hello there, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. Greatly appreciate you commenting throughout. As well as Marius, thank you again for that comment to keep the conversation flowing with the Sam Howell talk. And then right here, Mickey Delaney says, sorry I'm late. Well, Mick, I'm just glad that you're here while this is live. So thank you very much for tuning in when it comes to that. Melvin says that Willie Bucks commercial and laughs. Got to give another shout out to Darrell Owens for the great commentary in that commercial, because that's what makes that commercial right there. Mick said she was an awesome person to have on, and yes, definitely something that's been in the making for quite some time. Definitely tried to get Candi on a while back. Just our schedules didn't quite work out for that episode. But before the season ended, definitely got her back in here, and thank you very much again for taking the time to do that. And even Melvin says this, the only thing that would have made her entrance and exit better was if you played I Want Candy during those times. That song right there, that old school song right there, that's funny, but good one, Melvin. That is funny. With that being said, let's go ahead and take this into the next segment where we talk about the opponent of the week for week 15.
Look how we step. Who we got next? Step on the right, step on the left. Who do we rep?
And here with the opponent of the week, the Washington Commanders travel to Los Angeles to take the 6-7 Rams on in a contest, as the Commanders are here 4-9 heading into this game. When it comes to this game right here, the Rams were on a 4-game winning streak before they had that game yesterday against the Ravens. If they lost in overtime, it was definitely a good contest to watch. One of the reasons why I put Lamar Jackson in my Soldiers of the Week as my top 3 players of the week, because of what he did to lead that team back in that victory over the Rams. 37-31 in overtime was definitely a thriller. The Rams winning the previous 4 games before that. So I actually had a typo with that. Oh, my apologies. I was right. The previous 4 games they had won. When it comes to that, they looked good. Matthew Stafford definitely has been playing some solid ball throughout those games. And being a home game right here, the fact you're back home taking on a 4-9 Commanders team, it looks like they can mollywop the Commanders, especially how they played in the previous 3 games. But let me remind you, they've had some time off now. They've had a bye week to rest up, finally get this game plan a little bit more honed in as far as the defensive side, because the amount of points that they are giving up, doing their best to try to muster something together. Now, based on the news that we heard earlier from Candi talking about Jamin Davis and the fact that he's out on IR for the rest of the year, besides Montez Sweat and Chase Young and the impact they were making on the defense, he's probably the 3rd to 4th best player on this defense overall, and you lose him. You're basically grasping at straws when it comes to the way this team can show up on a week in and week out basis as far as the defensive side. We already knew the question marks heading in on the offensive line and with what Sam Howell has around it. But when it comes to the defense, it keeps getting depleted more and more each and every week. We keep seeing something a little bit different each and every week. And when it comes into this, it's like teams come in there and they mollywop them. And basically, it's like The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, showing up and saying this afterward.
You should know your role and shut your mouth.
Because you thought you would be able to come in here and do something impactful. No, you've proven in the past few games against the Dolphins, the Cowboys, and the other teams that you have played throughout this stretch as well, even the Giants, with the one that I call Tony DeVito, because his name is Tommy, yes, but he's playing like a Tony DeVito. Out there is the 3rd string quarterback coming in here and just slinging it up against this team. You look at how you've played since the Seahawks beat you by 3 in the previous 3-game losing skid. The Giants, it was close within 12, but then what this team did by giving up 45 points, a total of 90 points in 2 games. And you score a total of 25 points in those 2 games. I don't blame that as much on the offense, as we're seeing games that are ending 3-0 like we did in this previous Sunday's game with the Vikings and the Raiders. A real snooze fest, if you ask me. But at least you're putting up more points than that. But it really doesn't make a difference when your defense is giving up 45 points in the past 2 games and you're giving up 90 points. Do I think the Commanders have a chance to come into Los Angeles, and get a victory? Yeah, I think there's a shot after having some time off in this past bye week, but it's a very small shot, especially when you're down Jamin Davis. You don't really know what you're going to be able to plug in there to make up for that deficit right there at the position. We've already got huge question marks throughout your offensive line that we've seen throughout the entirety of the season. And even though they were making some moves throughout the stretches where they were having some victories, only 4, yes, but they were making some progress. They were shifting some things around, besides the injuries in the caliber of talent that you have on that side. It really doesn't make too much of a difference, which is why you're at 9 losses. I did bring up a point earlier where, your team, out of the 9 losses, 5 of the 9, you were pretty close in the game as far as you had the ability to win the game by only a possession or 2 difference of taking the lead and potentially winning the game. There's been 4 other games where you've been smacked around, looking like a bunch of dumpster pelicans and getting mollywopped out there on that field. I'm telling it as it is. I don't like talking about this team in this fashion because anybody who knows me knows on the half sleeve of my arm right here, I've got a logo that represents what they are formerly known as because it's part of my bloodline history. And we could talk about that on another show. But right here, we're talking about the Commanders. What I can tell you in this contest right here, when it comes to the Los Angeles Rams, is you're playing a team that did have, and I misquoted, it's a 3-game winning streak, followed by the loss that they had on this previous Sunday. So they lost by 6 points in overtime. They could have gone either way, and they could be on a 4-game winning streak against a team that we saw as the Rams. But unfortunately, they lost, but they were looking great up to that point. Looking at what we've seen from the Commanders do, I think that they can beat a team of that caliber. If you were to put a gun to my head in this moment, I would tell you no. But if you look at the fact that they've had some rest, a little bit more time to go over the books, pre-game a little bit better, and pre-plan how this action's going to go in this contest, the crowd noise won't be on your side because you're going to be away. But we have seen some decent games from this team on the road as well. So I have to say that they can put up a good fight. And it's going to be close or a little bit closer than 45-15 to what they lost to in the previous game. I don't think they're going to give up 45 points in this matchup. If they do, I will be surprised because I think that at some point you have to grow from that. Watch my luck. They'll give up 55 points in this contest, and it's possible that it could happen. I don't want it to happen. I hope it doesn't happen. I think it's going to be a bit much if it does happen. But what I can say is that they cannot slouch against this Rams team. They have to actually be on. And when I say on, this Commanders team needs to come in and play like they did against the Seahawks. They were locked in on that game. Yeah, they lost it, but they lost it by a field goal. That was the last time I've seen them truly locked in because even though they only lost by 12 against the Giants, they weren't really locked in at any point throughout that game. I would say the Seahawks game was the last time they were locked in. The last victory they got over the freaking Patriots, it wasn't even that great of a game there either. You're playing a Patriots team that, on paper, the way they were at that point, it shouldn't have been a 3-point game by the end of it when the clock struck 0. So, the Eagles game was definitely an entertaining game, but we're seeing some gaps in that Eagles team that we saw yesterday with how they played against the Cowboys that I can't really get as excited about a 7-point loss as I did in a previous game that they had where they lost by a field goal earlier in the season. There's been some games where they have been in it, is my point. Lost by 3 to 7 points, especially out of those 5 that I just mentioned a few minutes ago. So there are positives to take away from this season. And with those points being made and the fact that this team has had a break now, having a bye week and coming into this game pretty rested, I think that if they do lose this game, it's going to be a pretty close game. And if they win, they're basically going to take advantage of something that's exploited from the other team, that they found some type of hole to get through on the line, or they are exposing something as something that's they're deeming as wrong on the other side and taking advantage of it and making plays, getting touchdowns, first downs, whatever the case may be, to move the chains and get through the game. That's how I see the only way that they take this game against the Rams. But again, gun to head, saying no. And overall, I don't think they're going to get the win. I think they're going to lose by at least 3 to 10 points. If I were to put money on it and guess, if I were to say 3 to 10 points, that's going to be my guess, is what the Commanders will lose to. They will continue to lose throughout the next 4 games, have a decent draft pick in this upcoming draft, and hopefully, based on with what I was just talking about with Candi and what I've been saying for the previous 14 episodes throughout this year, I hope they stick with Sam Howell. He's taken 58 sacks, but again, before the year's over, if you stick with him throughout the rest of the season, the kid's going to throw for over 4,000 yards and over 25 touchdowns. If you stick with him at this point, I think that he's going to throw for 25 or more touchdowns and get to about 4,200 yards passing in this year, which, based on the talent that's around him as far as the offensive line and what's blocking, I think is going to be a pretty successful year for Sam Howell, considering what he's working with. And yes, you got Terry McLaurin and you got a decent tight end squad there as well. But other than that, the running back core has got several big questions along that side when it comes to the caliber of talent that you got there and what you've been getting is production for that. And that's basically a result of the offensive line because you can only do but so much when you have the blocking. But again, with the question marks in the running game, the question marks on the offensive line, and for you to basically have Scary Terry and a couple other weapons on your side to do that is really remarkable. So shout out to him. Shout out to the other players as well that are making the positive impact during a season that looks pretty dismal and dark on the production side. I have to give it to those players. And for this, unfortunately, though, when it comes to that, the great flowers that I gave in a tumultuous situation of shade, I have to say that the Rams are going to take this game on Sunday. And we got a couple comments here. It looks like, Mick saying that he shared the show. Well, thank you, Mick, for sharing the show. And thank you to those of you who are tuning in and watching live as we have one more segment to take this to, and that being the final drive.
Bet on ourselves, so what you expect? A die-hard fan never live with regret. Yes, sir.
And here with the final drive, the closing thoughts heading into week 15. For those of the players that are still healthy and still here through this part of the season where we only have 4 games left to look at, I have to say the true grit that you guys are showing, especially being led by Sam Howell in that category, to take those amount of sacks, potentially to take 70-plus sacks before the season ends at this rate, is definitely a tough feat to watch. Watching the collapse of the offensive line through several key moments throughout this year and in years prior leading up to this have been tough to see. From 2019 on, this team has drastically changed as far as the core front being the offensive line, and it has just gotten worse each and every year. Part of it's been the mood and the attitude from what we've seen throughout that locker room. The other part is just the caliber players that you've been bringing in based on, cap space and draft stock and moves that were made previously to those drafts, and just doing the best you can to work with what you got. But when it comes to signing key free agents, there has been some talented individuals, available in free agency during that time, especially throughout the past 5 years. But this Commanders team, the Washington football team, formerly known as the Redskins, all those 3 incarnations throughout that time frame have been, working with an ownership group, or basically not wanting to work with an ownership group, which is why they didn't sign with them. Now that you've got a decent core in the management side of it, as far as your ownership group that's going to make some moves this offseason, and like Candi was saying, it's going to be a pretty noisy offseason. All the moves that are made, I feel like you're going to be able to entice a different stock of free agents between now and the next 3 to 5 years. In the next 3 to 5 years, they could potentially build something really special in Washington. It could involve not having the same name. It could involve not playing at the same stadium. Completely different name, completely different location. Still the same fan base. This fan base, though, for the past 30 years has taken way more a beating. They have taken a huge beating out here in these streets when it comes to just watching these games, because there were a lot of points within that first 15 to 20 years watching those games where it would be up and down, up and down, up and down, as far as they would be winning and they would be losing. And as far as the way the game would go inside the last 2 minutes, they would have a chance to win the game. And then they would either let you down or win in some dramatic fashion, like they did when they scored back-to-back touchdowns in less than 4 minutes of Monday Night Football to beat the Cowboys after a deficit of 13-0 and beat them 14-13 back in 2005. Oh, I remember that game when they were formerly known as the Redskins. This team is probably had the more results of cardiac arrests in the past 30 years than any other team in the NFL, in my opinion. Over the past 30 to 35 years, it's probably had more fans having cardiac arrest during the game because of result of watching this team. At least this year, you kind of knew what you were getting yourself into. It was unfortunate because that first 4 to 6 weeks, they were doing pretty good, playing pretty solid. Even the couple games they did lose, they were still in it for the mix at that point. Looking at it in this case, there's going to be a lot of changes during this offseason. There has to be, because there's not much this team can do, even during their bye week in preparation, to improve from giving up 35 points one week and 30 points the next. There's really not much. You fired your defensive coordinator. You're at a point in the season where you really can't afford to fire your head coach because you're still going to be paying him anyway. So you might as well just have him sink with the ship. And now, you basically got to assess what you got for next season. And based on, the results and the reactions that I got from Candi throughout this episode and what I've been saying this entire season, along with what I've seen my other colleagues say out here on the other podcast, when it comes to Sam Howell, overall, the majority of the consensus agrees that he is something special. And if you put the right pieces around him, has the ability to do things greater beyond this season. And I believe that he can do it with or without EB because of what he proved to me in that Week 18 game last year against the Cowboys. And yeah, people again were telling me during the offseason that I was drinking too much of the Sam Howell Kool-Aid. Well, look at it right now. He's only got 4 wins, and he's less than 400 yards away. Well, no, less than 600 yards away, a little over 500 yards away from breaking 4,000 passing yards. There's not many players. There's not many quarterbacks that can still sling for nearly 4,000 passing yards inside of only 4 victories of the season with 4 games left of the season. And keep in mind, before we recently, within the past couple seasons, went to 17 games in a year, if it was at the point previous to that, we would only have 3 games left. And the fact that we're only got 3 games left in that span, if it was only 16 games. And he has this many passing yards in this time frame, on only 4 victories on the season at 4-9. It speaks volumes. He is a talented quarterback and working with very little. And if anybody thinks that it would just be best to rip the rug right out from under him, yeah, he's got 14 interceptions, but based on the pressure that he's dealing with, if he had better protection, he'd probably only have half of the amount of interceptions, if not even less interceptions than that. The kid is something special. You need to build around him. Those are my closing thoughts from this episode right here as far as the Commanders. Before we get on out of here, I want to let you guys know that, of all things, this show is sponsored by
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
And based on that, I've showed you commercials of everything else, but I want to take 60 seconds and show you another great thing of another show that I have, as it is the holidays. And this is a great clip right here from what others have told me. This little right here. Look at the inside of these cakes. Now, when you bite into it, just as I demonstrated while you were talking at the beginning of your discussion right there, I could taste the drugs inside of this cake, sick. I could taste the addiction within the cream filling of this cake right here, to where they not only us with that cake right there, but they made an ice cream out of it. They made an ice cream out of it. A 1-pint Christmas tree cake ice cream. Look at that little just smile up there. Look, she is up to no good on there. Look at that. Look at that smile on there, sick. She knows that she got you. Got him is what's in her mind right now.
Acknowledge me.
Look at that little smile right there. She's up to no good.
D. Willie in the evening. Thursdays at 11:15 p.m. Eastern, 10:15 p.m. Central. Exclusively on Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
You can check out that show on Thursday nights, 11:15 p.m. Eastern, here on Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome. This Thursday, though, actually taking the night off from that show, as we've done 11 episodes already. You can check it back next week on Thursday night there on December 21st, as we'll have one more episode before the holidays. So, guys, it's been one great episode here. Again, got to thank Candi Waller again for taking the time to be here for episode 15. Had a blast with her and definitely had a blast with those of you who definitely were here along in the comments. Thank you to Mickey Delaney for sharing the show, and to those of you out there who also shared it as well and commented throughout, and hope to see you again at some point down the road when it comes to the Commanders Gridiron Report. Thank you as always to A7BN Sports and as well as Team MBS Media to help me out here with broadcasting this show, and to those of you who have had eyes on it throughout this past hour of time. Episode 15 is in the books. I will see you guys next Monday with episode 16 as Darrell Owens of Legacy Maker Sports Network and Bowie TV will be joining me next week for episode 16, as we will have 1 hour of greatness.
What?
I said 1 hour great.
What?
To keep it 2 weeks in a row of great.
What?
Oh!
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely looking forward to that next week. Again, thank you all for tuning in. We've only got one more thing left to do, and that is looking one awesome outro. As always, stay safe out here in these streets.
Commanders, where my soldiers, right side, Commanders, where my soldiers, left side, Commanders, where my soldiers, watch the middle, Commanders, where my soldiers, now we step, where my soldiers, right side, Commanders, where my soldiers, left side, now we step, where my soldiers, watch the middle, Commanders, where my soldiers,
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
You ain't got to go home, but you got to get on up out of here. Thank you again for tuning in, and as always, stay safe out here in these streets.